Previously on Seeking Justice.
Back in my room, I start reading through the police reports. There are hundreds of pages of interview transcripts. I freeze when I start reading one. A hunting friend of Fisher's starts talking about a hermit that they met a few weeks before the murders. This man lived off the grid, very rarely went to town, maybe like once a year. He also has a heart condition. Is this the rancher I'm looking for?
As a crime reporter, I've covered hundreds of murders, done dozens of ride-alongs, gone undercover on sting operations. I've even been invited to the F.B.I. Academy to see the training that new agents go through. I've walked death row, seeing only a set of eyes staring at me through the small slits. I know their names and I know their crimes. These are the ones who've been caught, and it's those ones that got away that still get me. Join me, Rob Koebel, as I go out seeking justice, the hunt for FBI's most wanted, Robert Fisher.
This is Detective Heinzelman.
Hey, Detective Heinzelman, it's Rob Koebel calling. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Rob. I'm good. How about yourself?
John Heinzelman is the veteran Scottsdale Police Detective currently in charge of the Robert Fisher murder investigation. After playing some phone tag back and forth, this is our first call together talking about the case. Have you listened to the podcast, or?
Yeah, I listened to him.
So, this rancher, is that something you guys were familiar with, or?
I talked to, because the other problem is that it's been handed from agent to agent and from officer to officer, so I talked to my counterpart at the FBI, and we were just trying to figure out, he seemed to remember some sort of tip that came in that said there was a ranch, but he didn't have the specifics on it, and I guess that's what I was reaching out to you to say, what else do you know about that person? Have we identified him yet?
Well, so, literally I played the conversation that went through there, and we have not identified him. So I played the raw audio of my interview with Jess at the time there. And she says that, they did the right thing. They immediately, thank goodness, called the 1-800 number, or called the FBI. And allegedly, the FBI came up there, interviewed her, and then the clerk at the time. And, they never found anything out from there. So my thought was, from what they described to me, they've never seen this guy before. They had never, and it was just so random and weird. And I found credibility in her voice and the story. It wasn't anything she was pushing on me, like, how I'm saying, like you get a buff that wants to come in here and, be part of the case and everything. And there's people that I've turned off just because I felt that way. So I felt the credibility was really there. And, that's why I reached out to the FBI and Scottsdale PD. I'm like, well, what do you guys know about this guy?
Right. As far as that goes, that's what we were trying to look. I met with one of the agents. He's since been promoted, and this case has been transferred to another special agent on the FBI, and she's getting up to speed on it. And then so we're still trying to figure out now. Okay, what do we want to do together as far as kind of taking this tactic with. Initially, it was, we're going to go 330 million people, and we're going to do one at a time. Are you Fisher? No. Are you Fisher? No. We're going to keep picking them off until we find him, or until they're. But the problem is that it's like, okay, each tip we come into, it's literally we hold up a picture, or we hold up the DNA, and we say, is this you, or fingerprints? And then when they say it's not, then we move on and we check them off the list. Well, we're never gonna get there anywhere that way. But the other way is, what else do we do? How else do we narrow this search down a little bit? I mean, we can chop off, ages and sexes and races and things like that, but that still leaves just too big of a pool to keep individually trying to eliminate one at a time these tips that come in.
Well, and I thought, too, about this tip is that, from reading those police reports and you guys interviewing his friends, he camped all over Arizona. He knew Arizona. It seems very. Argument is whether he was as good as an avid outdoorsman that we all wanted, or he wanted us to think he was. I'll tell you what. At least my gut feeling is he sure as hell knew Arizona, without a doubt. And then It was the idea that his sister said at one point in time he hated to travel. His dad said that too. So,
Right.
like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be probably keeping around in that area. Do you remember? Because this is where I wondered if this guy played into it, and I faintly remember driving up to Clint Wells when you guys released the report. Do you remember reading about a guy that several of his friends called the Hermit?
Something that sounds to ring a bell, but keep going.
Yeah. So this hermit guy, there's several of the friends that said that Fisher, about 3 weeks before the murders, he became infatuated. He met a guy who was up in Clint Wells, Arizona, and he lived off the land. He very rarely came to town, and he had a medical condition of a heart condition, and occasionally would have to get his medicine. But he chopped wood for this small community up there, stuck to himself. I guess there were a couple different descriptions. One, he was a retired like Honeywell executive, but he lived off the land, had no TV, didn't want any interest, and Fisher was just infatuated with it. I can tell you what page the reports are, but you guys were so good to redact it. I couldn't tell you what friend it was. I found it interesting. One person described this guy the first time, and it was a friend that had firsthand knowledge that he was there, that he was in his 70s. And then another one described it, and I'm like, well, the guy's dead, by now.
Right.
And then the other one I described was, or they described him in his 40s. But several of his friends, including his boss at the time at Mayo Clinic, always thought about this hermit that he talked about. And he went back up there another time to go meet him. So I wondered if, that was maybe the same guy that was living around here, that he was thinking about, ooh, this would be good. I befriended this guy. We got along. It would be a place to go.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's the thing, and that's the other part of this, is to try to get into the psyche to determine, is that something that he would that would have been interesting to him, to say, look, I'm going to now give up everything, and I'm going to live off the land, or I'm going to live as this person, as this mountain man kind of thing. Nobody really knew. You get people that say, yeah, he was kind of a weekend warrior. You get other people say, no, he was an avid survivalist. He certainly did know the areas, but again, he was on an ATV most of the time.
Yep.
So it comes down to, what do you believe about this guy? Do you think that this is something that he was interested in doing, or that could keep him completely off the grid and completely hidden? The one thing I will say is, in looking at this work in this case, there are a lot of places in Arizona that are kind of hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
Where you
oh my gosh, people don't realize
there's
that.
Little pockets of folks that live here that, even though it's right close to a city, there's no relation with the city whatsoever. So. But then again, that's what I said. It's just determining, okay, what do we think about him? What kind of person do you think he is?
Well, that you sort of set me up. That's a perfect, segue to my next question. Is when you read, from like some of the family friends, which all seem to be around the Baptist church in Scottsdale. He's a family man. He's a man of God. And then you find a couple of these friends that say, oh yeah, he liked his whiskey, he liked his women, and when he had too much to drink, he got into fights. I mean, did he live two different lifestyles?
My opinion on that is, I think he lived the life of his surroundings. Whoever was there, that's the side they got. And so, it's not as, I didn't look at it as mysteriously as he's got a different lifestyle, or two lives. It looked like, well, I know him, like people know you from working with you, and they know a certain person, and then family and friends know a little bit different. It's, there's some similarities, but like, oh, my church group, well, we never went out to the bars, and I never saw him, drinking. So maybe he was a fighter, and just a complete, when he had too much to drink, he became real argumentative. But
sure.
Those folks never saw him. They saw him on Sunday morning, and it was, well, this is the Robert I knew. We're trying to reconstruct his entire life from anecdotes, and saying, well, this is what I think he would have done. And that's where the thing is. That's where we talk about, like, well, what would old Blue do? Or what would Robert have done in this situation? Shoot, I don't know.
I also found, as you were aware of, a note at the family's grave from Brock.
Right.
Was that the only thing that I found strange was it was written directly to Fisher.
Yeah, I don't know. The name doesn't ring a bell. As far as anything else, or as far as who that could have been, as to what the point of writing it. Is it still there? Did you leave it or did you take it?
No, I left it.
Okay.
So I was there. Oh, it was before everything went crazy again with your cases are on the rise, and I left it there. I have pictures of it. I guess, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily see that because you're listening to the podcast. I have pictures I'll forward to you of all the stuff if you want. If you need them, I can email them to you. I have no problem with that. But I left it there. It was written. It had been there. So since I was there in June, it had been there. It was put there it was dated April 11th. And that would have been one day then after the 19th anniversary. And reading it, it didn't indicate we'll forgive you for the family. It was just strange. But I can't say, detective, that I go to a bunch of graves and read people's stuff a lot either,
Right.
But, and 19 years later, somebody took the time out to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, Brock. And I didn't remember any Brock. I remember, Bill Cooper, the father-in-law. I remembered, a bunch of others, Myrna, Roger, the brother-in-law, a bunch of those people. But I was just like, this is just a little bit odd. I don't think there was anything outrageous. But to me, it was somebody that maybe is, as you mentioned, people still follow this case. And they just made a point of going there. But I left it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that might be something I could always head over and take a look and see what's there, see what we see. Get a copy for it, of it for myself, so I can at least do what I can to maybe follow up on it or identify who this person is.
I guess you're sort of among the assumption that he's dead. Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, and if I have to be, kind of pigeonholed into a category, the problem or what I have kind of my issue with it is we've never had in the 19 years we've never had a verified credible tip where it's like this is definitely we can go back and say that was definitely him. And there were a couple of things that were done immediately because it was more of a at the time it was a quick apprehension mission. We thought he was up there. The tip came in. The truck is there, the dog is there, we're going to grab him. And so when we got there and we didn't find him right away, it threw, in my opinion, it kind of threw that thought process threw a wrench into it because it was going to be, we had our urban SWAT team searching the woods. So it was one of these things where okay, he's going to pop out. And then it became a kind of an officer safety issue to say, okay, he's armed. God knows what kind of guns he's got with him. Is he bunkered in somewhere? And he's going to take out law enforcement. So there was a real big concern at that time to say, hey, look, we got to go. He's here. We got to find him. We got to grab a hold of him, and we have to do it to the point where he's not, going to ambush us. So.
Right. No, I remember, I'm 100% with you. I remember leaving, 3TV at the time in the station, going up there. Nightfall came and we were driving in the back of the woods coming around there. And that was my biggest concern too. It's a great thing if we just happen to roll up on a 3TV news rig, bye-bye two of us, and he's off onto his next thing. Now, I'll be honest, I thought when I was going up there and you guys were securing the area that we were going to find his body and it was a murder-suicide. So It threw me, and I think it threw all of us, what you shared is really interesting because you were like, holy crap, there's so many caves. You have the reservation right there. What do we do now? But the first thing that I tell people who are armchair quarterbacks 19 years ago, I'm like, you got to remember just what you painted, how we responded up there. Especially law enforcement, because he was armed and dangerous. What we saw, what he did in Scottsdale,
and on top of it, it was a 10-day gap.
Yep.
Between this, so when the tip finally came in, and talking to the folks who were working it at the time, when they said this tip came in, they literally raced out. A couple of the detectives had met their wives, like almost on a on an off ramp. Hey, pack me, honey, pack me a couple of days worth of clothes. We gotta go. They raced up there because that was the thing. It was he was here. We were going to find him. We were going to close this case out finally. One way or another, either we're going to apprehend him or he's going to be self-inflicted somewhere. And so when all of a sudden that didn't happen, and then you realized you're right, and some of these caves were little more than just kind of crawl spaces that opened up a little bit underneath some trees, but some of them were just you didn't even see it, and then all of a sudden, there's kind of this opening. So that became that big fear, is to say, well, is he hiding in here somewhere? And then the thought turned to, well, maybe he fell in there, and maybe he had a medical issue or something happened there. So there's all kinds of different camps building as far as, well, what did he do? Did he get a ride? Did he do this as a misdirection, and now he's really sitting in Mexico somewhere? Or we're going back into, we're trying to piece this together as to what we think his thought process was.
Sure. And then 19 years later, it's so much easier sometimes. When I went back up there, I was thinking about the ATM machine, shortly after taking out the $280. It's like he posed on camera for it, put Mary's car behind there. It was almost like taunting. And if Fisher, from what I've read in the reports, and we've talked to the, friends and stuff, was such a control freak, I don't know. It was always my thought. It was like, hey guys, you want to see how much control I have? Watch this. I'll give you a little breadcrumb here, and then I'm going to come up here, and you may find me in 10 days is a long time. I read the report of the guy who spotted the car and thought he saw the door open one day, the next day it was closed. We have no idea when he left. I mean, it's such a challenge. It's like just literally vanishing in the wind.
Well, and those kind of things came up too. That was the problem, because the tip came in, as you know, it came in through a third party. So by the time we actually talked to the person who said, yes, I'm the one who saw the vehicle, things had changed, or things weren't exactly clear. Was the door open, or was it not? Were the windows down, or were they not? It was all this kind of conjecture here. And then, quite frankly, what I say is everybody then became a dog expert, or everybody said, well, what would Blue do? Blue would have never, that dog would have never just stayed there. Had he walked off into the woods to kill himself, the dog would have followed. Had he gotten a car, that dog would have followed. Had this happened. So now everybody is here. We're talking about we're taking out our junior veterinary clinic badges, and we're saying, what would the dog do? Because this is going to be the case. This is going to solve it. So it's, what would Blue do? And I don't know what Blue would do. I mean, I just, because that's the whole point. Why did he take the dog just to abandon the dog?
Well, I think that, that in the videos that I've seen, and the friends that he's talked to, the home videos and stuff, is, man, he loved those dogs that he had, whether it was Blue or Ruger, more than the family. I mean, that comes through very clearly. I mean, that's one thing that I could pick up on him. And, maybe he didn't have the heart. I guess you could go through this all the time. He didn't have the heart to leave the dog behind when the house was going to explode. He couldn't kill the dog. So he brings the dog, but realizes it's a liability. I mean, you could go on forever and ever. And what I tried to do, like with the podcast, was try to move the dial forward. And you're probably like, yeah, good luck with that. We have for 19 years,
Right.
Coming up in the next episode of Seeking Justice.
Yeah, it's a constant. It never goes kind of out of favor. We'll always get like a call a week, or a couple calls a week is not uncommon. So
really?
even today, yeah.
Tips keep coming in for the FBI's most wanted Robert Fisher, and the $100,000 reward remains unclaimed. Hear what this detective says are the questions he wants answered and believes may help find Fisher. Seeking Justice: The Hunt for the FBI's Most Wanted Robert Fisher is a Back to One Entertainment production, hosted and produced by Rob Koebel, edited and produced by J.J. Geiger. This podcast was recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement. All rights are reserved.